What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I just finished rewatching for the millionth time the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy, so you guessed it, today we're going to be talking about why is Spider-Man 3 so bad. Let's get into it. Spider-Man 3 is the third in a trilogy of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies starring Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst. Now, it follows up the amazing, the spectacular, the tremendous movie, which is Spider Man 2. And how does it follow that up? Well, it's just bad. Yeah, it's just not a good movie at all. And it feels like the entire time that Tobey Maguire is literally teabagging the fans, so to speak. So, yeah, it's just not good at all. And Tobey Maguire is one of those actors who came out in several interviews making fun of the character, saying that he had never read a comic book, never intended to read a comic book, and thought they were laughable and stupid. Now, since then, he has warmed back up to playing a superhero and even possibly returning in a Spider-Verse type of movie, but that could largely be due to the fact that since Spider-Man, his career has largely, well, tanked. So, what makes this movie so bad? Well, there are several issues, and since we're talking about Tobey Maguire, let's go ahead and talk about the actors, the acting, and the character. You take a lovable character like Peter Parker, who was warm, endearing, charming, fun, and just an all around likable guy, the kind of person that you really want to see succeed. And in Spider Man 3, he really becomes the person that you enjoy watching him fail. They turn the character of Peter Parker in Spider Man 3 into an inconsiderate, selfish, and just idiotic jerk. And that's not really just not what you want to see. And also with Mary Jane's character, they take her and they turn her into a selfish, petty, and jealous girlfriend type. And I'm not even just talking about the situation between Peter and Gwen, which, what an odd thing to do to introduce Gwen into the movie at this time. And I like Bryce Dallas Howard, but she just doesn't really fit as Gwen. And honestly, I think her character would have been a lot more enjoyable if they had called her Felicia. That's just my opinion. But even Mary Jane's character, but she becomes selfish to the point where that it almost comes across that she is jealous and angry at Peter's quote unquote success as Spider Man and the fact that now he's not the bumbling twit, that he's actually likable to people that don't know any better, to the actual general public. And she becomes jealous and kind of despises that. And it's just weird and it just doesn't work at all. In fact, there's really only one character in this movie that's likable and stays consistent, and that's Harry. Harry Osborn, of course, being played by the amazing James Franco in this trilogy, manages to be the only character that you really end up liking or caring anything about, even though that he is set up in Spider-Man 2 as playing a villainous role and does so throughout the majority of the movie until the end, whenever that he realizes the errors of his way and comes to save his buddy Peter and MJ, of course, and also ends up being given kind of a uh, how shall I say it, poetic but also kind of rude death, dying pretty much the exact same way that his father did by being impaled by his own glider. So I guess that's just how Osborns die in the Raimi trilogy. But anyway, we've got really unlikable characters. They're inconsistent for the most part, except for Harry. And really, the only scenes in the movie that I would say are good are the ones where that Harry is in them, and those are the only times that you really end up liking the characters. In fact, it goes so far that you almost begin to ship Harry and MJ as a couple. It goes that far because the relationship and the dynamic between Peter and MJ is just so awful and so forced. At least it is until the very end scene, which is probably the only other really good character scene in the movie, is right at the very end when Peter comes back to apologize to MJ. But other than that, there's really just not a whole lot of substance here. And then, of course, we dive into the villains. One of the most glaring problems in the movie, and probably most talked about, is of course the treatment of Venom and the Black Suit symbiote. Now, I don't know exactly what they were thinking when they did this. Well, yes, we do know what they were thinking. The executives came to Sam Raimi and told him, hey, look, Venom is extremely popular, put him into the movie. And Venom is an extremely complex character, as well as being popular, and they did not understand, and neither did Sam Raimi, that you can't just force such a character like this into a movie just half baked like he was. And while Topher Grace is a fine enough of an actor, I never really bought him as Eddie Brock, never bought him as Venom, and just came across as laughable to me. And the black suit itself was not given its due at all. And honestly, the best way to do a a Venom tie-in with Spider-Man is Spider-Man himself needs to be faced with a formidable foe, even say the Sinister Six, and where that he feels like he has no way to beat them except by using the black suit which has come into his life now. And things go great for a while and have him win the day with the black suit, but then have start some things start to go awry, little hints here and there of maybe some aggression, some things that are out of the ordinary, and some problems with behavior, stuff like that, and leave it there and address the issue of the black suit and Venom in a sequel. But Peter Parker was already unlikable and already having uh, character issues and problems like that even before he got the black suit, which is introduced very late into the movie, and it's just shoehorned in, and it's very obvious that it's shoehorned in. And besides that, the look of Venom, I'm really not sure what's wrong with it, but there's something wrong with it. In my heart of hearts, I know that's just not the Venom I know. Then we move on to Sandman. And while Sandman is given what you would seem to be a decent story arc, for whatever reason, it just doesn't work for me. It feels hollow, it feels forced, and it just doesn't seem to work. And he's played by a decent enough actor, Thomas Hayden Church, and it still just doesn't work. And the idea of making him Uncle Ben's killer just causes way too many continuity issues and causes flaws and stuff for Spider-Man 1, because you would think that if the police knew that the guy that they originally thought killed Uncle Ben had an accomplice who they had captured and had in jail for many, many years, you would think they would have told them, oh yeah, hey, we got the guy who actually killed him and he's in prison right now, so we just want to let you know that. But no, they wait several years to let them know that, oh yeah, this is the guy who actually killed your Uncle Ben and your husband. And yeah, now he's escaped and he's become this super terrible supervillain threat, so we're just letting you know. And then also giving him trying to give him a redemption at the end with having Peter give him forgiveness and everything like that. And while I see what they were going for, kind of harkening back to Aunt May's saying that revenge is like a poison and him being able to forgive and everything, it just doesn't work. It's too much. It's too much to ask, and they're trying to get emotional payoffs where that it just wasn't there. The emotions weren't there and the feelings weren't there, and it just didn't make any sense, and everything felt shallow and hollow. And oh yeah, I'm gonna forget that you were about one hit away from killing me about 10 seconds ago. It's all good, man. You're a good guy now. Really? Nah, I don't buy it. And then we've got good old Harry. And like I said before, Harry Osborn, or the New Goblin, is the one bright spot in this movie full of darkness and just bitter angst. But yeah, Harry actually works in this movie pretty well, and part of that being because his story arc and his vengefulness and his anger and hatred for Spider-Man was set up very well in Spider-Man 2, and they just continued with that. So his story arc, his villainous role works really well. And even whenever that he comes to the end where that he realizes the error of his ways, even that pays off well. because you've got the conversation between him and Bernard, his butler, and so that works good. The fight between him and Peter is okay. It's fun, it's interesting, it's good. And then whenever that they end up teaming up at the end, that's also kind of fun. Some of the action in the movie is decent, it's passable, but it doesn't compare to Spider-Man 2, and that's another fault that I think comes with Spider-Man 3 is when you've got a movie like Spider-Man 2 where the bar is set so high, it does make it difficult to come back to those levels. Not saying it can't be done, it obviously can, but it does create some problems, and you do have comparisons. Not trying to give it excuses, Spider-Man 3 is still a steaming hot pile of garbage, and Spider-Man 2 is still one of the best superhero movies ever made, and probably always will stand as such, but nevertheless, I digress. So, all in all, we have a movie who failed to live up to the glory of its predecessors, and just in general let us down, and largely due to poor acting, people just really not caring about what they were doing, at least that's what it seemed. A director who seemed to have come to the end of his tropes and gimmicks, and just poor dialogue, poor writing, and just one dimensional, unlikable characters that are in a story that they don't understand, and quite honestly, we as the fans don't understand either. And it just leaves us with a bad taste in our mouth. For some reason, though, and maybe it's because of the nostalgia of Spider Man 1 and Spider Man 2, I still find myself being able to rewatch this movie. And even though it leaves me with a sad feeling at the end, I don't know. I rewatch it and I watch it over again. Maybe I'm just hoping that somehow, some way, the movie fairies have come in and they have switched this for an alternate version that is actually acceptable. But that is yet to happen. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think about Spider Man 3 and the problems, or do you like it? For some reason, this movie has a 63% on Rotten Tomato, which is considered fresh. Maybe I'm one of the few out there that don't like this movie. That's okay. But I wanted to give you guys my opinions on it. And while it is not the worst movie I've ever seen, it is definitely a disappointing movie for me as a Spider-Man fan, as a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man fan, and it most definitely is the worst in the trilogy. But even given all that, if we were to get a Spider-Man 4 miraculously for some reason, I would watch it. And I would be intrigued. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on Spider-Man 3 as the trilogy as a whole. And until next time, keep geeking out.